Hey guys, Linus Tech Tips here, and the best modified cars are the ones that you can drive every single day. Who knew? Tattoo that on your forehead and then tattoo that on your best friend's forehead so you don't forget. Now, the problem with that entire concept is that the best daily drivers that are modifiable are usually ones that are the most popular. How are you supposed to be different and unique if you don't have a car that nobody else knows about? You know, rotary swapped Corvette people. Chat, I'm looking at you. Okay, reliable cars are fun. Okay, they can be fun. Then if you can modify them and you can do it the right way, a lot of times I do think that it can be some of the best cars you could possibly modify. The 10th Gen Civic Si, in my opinion, is probably one of the most prime examples of a platform that you can do it all with. Now, there are some things that you're going to need to know if you're thinking about buying one of these cars or you bought one and you're looking to know a useless amount of information so that you can brag to people about, in which case you came to the right video. How are you? Let me know. I'm Alex. Welcome to Martini Works. You can find me over at alex.martini with 2 underscores on Instagram. And if you're looking for car parts, you can mod your car with your friends over at martiniworks.com. We do wheel and tire packages. We have intakes and exhaust, tires, brakes, everything you could imagine, all the right parts, regardless of budget, the right way. I don't even know how to segue that level of information, but here's what we are going to do. We're going to talk about a bunch of car knowledge, and I'm sliding in some food knowledge too. Now, even though I got a little bit of slack from the comment section last time I talked about food, because apparently I didn't make my salmon right, you know what? Tastes good to me, bud. All right? I'm not a professional chef, okay? I'm just the guy that buys the salmon that's on sale for $6, okay? And let me tell you what. If one person finally decided to make that their meal with their significant other, they're guaranteed getting to second base. Guaranteed. And that's what matters. Okay. Number one, why was the first turbocharged Honda Civic Si model this generation? Now, for those that don't know, the 10th Gen Civic Si came with a 1.5 liter inline 4. It was called the L15B7. Did make a few people upset because it wasn't a K series and it was no longer really introduced in the Si. So it had the same amount of power as the 9th Gen and it actually had less torque. So when the 10th Gen got released, if you actually go back to some of like the old forums, you're going to see a lot of people were pretty upset with the 10th Gen Si. And they will always, still to this day, because if you own a Honda Civic Si and you modify them, you're part of a cult. A lot of people believe that it was a step backwards, at least for a little bit of time. If you're looking at getting a 10th Gen Civic Si, the 1.5 liter turbo is actually better almost across the board. They fixed a lot of the torque curve. They fixed a lot of just like the power band with the gearing and things like that in the 10th Gen Si, and it actually feels really great. It does feel better than the 9th Gen. People will argue that it's worse. I would say it's more different. The 9th Gen is still more of that like raw Honda Civic feel, where the 10th Gen is a little bit more smooth. And to be clear, the 10th Gen, when it was released, was the fastest Si stock for stock. Why does it feel like the 10th Gen is just different? A lot of people always ask this when they're trying to understand what car to buy. Like, should I get a 9th, 10th, or 11th Gen Civic? They'll also ask if they should get a GTI or an ST. We will get into that. Just stay for the whole video with me. You're probably cooking right now, or you're on the shitter, okay? Good news, 20 minutes, your boss won't notice if you're gone for 20. The reason the 10th Gen was a little bit different was, I think it has to do with the fact that this was the first time the Civic was ever predominantly designed by the North American Honda team. For the longest time, Honda Civic and almost all Honda makes were all really kind of managed and macro designed out of their headquarters in Japan. Rightfully so. Japanese company making a lot of stuff for Japan, and then they obviously made their stuff for America as well. As the market continued to grow, America, us, and North America became the biggest buyers of Honda vehicles. Now keep in mind that this is a big deal. Now the Civic is a global vehicle. There are more than 35 million Honda Civics since its production date in 1972 that have been manufactured and sold across the globe. It is one of the most successful vehicles of all time. The US has accounted for 1/3 of those sales. That's a little under 11 million Honda Civics between 1972 and now have entered our beautiful country and have decided to drive around on our roads. Considered the gateway drug to Honda love, it made sense for this generation. They wanted to do it in previous generations but couldn't. The 10th generation was when Honda finally decided to pull development from Japan and put it into the US. This information could cause fights. This information could change the way that you see the world. This information could be completely useless. Congratulations, you get all 3 in this video because we're not in a rush. Most people would then say, then the 9th gen is better, right? I mean, the 9th gen wasn't made specifically for America, and it's got an older engine, and it's got the same amount of horsepower and has higher torque numbers. What I would say is people love their 10th. I don't know a lot of people that would get a 10th gen and say that they don't like it. The SI, the manual, all of it is good outside of the rev hang, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but they're incredibly easy to modify. They're fun to drive. They're good to use on the canyon roads or back roads. I think they look killer. And the 10th gen Civic Si had a helical limited slip differential. Which is good. I think that's great, especially because you're playing around with a front wheel drive car. You also get a manual. They're pretty much set to rock and roll. The 9th gen is something that you'd want to get if you wanted something that's a little bit more analog, just a little bit more dated. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this question, but I don't think people saying that the 9th gen is like astronomically better than the 10th is fair or right. That's just my opinion. And if you're looking to get convinced between the two, I would say save a couple pennies, get the SI, get the 10th gen, and I think you're going to be set to own a car for like 10 years. The big thing that people will talk about is this fun 4-letter acronym. It's called LSPI. It is not something that is a urinary infection. LSPI, okay, that stands for low speed pre-ignition. It's something that exists on this car and other cars as well. So what happens is it's a premature ignition in the direct injection engines. The 1.5 liter turbo 4 is a direct injection engine. They just got rid of the middle bits that they didn't need anymore. And technically a lot of cars are switching to this, and a lot of cars can have this issue as well. BMWs don't have it in this sense, but they have a similar carbon buildup that can be a pretty big issue in some of the older BMW models. LSPI is pretty serious. If you're under full load, let's say you just got, you're pinning it, you're going 30 miles an hour in 6, and you take that throttle to 100, not good, not recommended to do in the 10th gen Civic Si, because the engine will blow up. Catastrophic. It'll look exactly like my K24. That's right over there. What happens is essentially you have ignition before you're supposed to have ignition, and it can cause damage to the pistons, and then essentially the whole thing blows up. So as long as you avoid that and you don't try to floor it while the RPMs are low and you're trying to just show off, you should be just fine. Now, a big trick I'd like to keep in mind here, especially for anybody looking to buy one, this does include when you try to do like a burnout or if you launch the car. I've noticed what people will do is they put it in first, clutch, rev up, get it up to like 6, they go and they dump it, and then as the car comes down in the revs, if it doesn't actually keep the revs up as they're burning the tires, it'll actually stay in that like 2,500, 3,000 RPM range for enough time to cause damage as well. So just be cautious, if you will, and you should be just fine. Now, I'm not doing a very good job at selling the 10th gen. I've just told you that it's kind of just as okay as the 9th gen, but it's more expensive, but it's better, but not really. The engine will blow up if you floor it at low RPMs. People said they don't like it in comparison to the 9th gen and say that the 11th gen's better. I'm really not doing a good job here, but I promise you, you and I, we collectively love the 10th gen Civic Si because we accept it for what it is. Now, it doesn't really have VTEC either. We're just getting the bad stuff out of the way. The 1.5 liter Earth Dreams Turbo doesn't have VTEC in the way that you probably remember VTEC from 2001. Why doesn't it have it? Because variable cam timing directly on the gears and valves just isn't as good as it used to be. The engines themselves and technology has just gotten better, old man, and not all of your Honda motors need to have VTEC. Now that said, there is something very fun about VTEC, like old VTEC, but it's just not really a thing anymore. Like getting a hamburger on a flight that's only 3 hours long used to be awesome when you really think about it, but realistically, we just grew up in different times. Okay, now you can get VTEC in a Honda Civic. It just comes with another acronym you need before, and that's called R and the Type. Even then, the Type R only had VTEC on the exhaust camshaft side of it. So they were already phasing it out. They had it for the Type R for additional performance, but the cost didn't make sense for this generation. And here you go. So what you're left with, and you can get different versions. I'm focusing on the 1.5 liter. Obviously, I think that's the biggest one to focus on. That's the one most people are gonna buy. You get the turbocharger, you get the manual transmission, you get the helical limited slip differential, you get a pretty good look, and you get it in a coupe or a sedan. So now you get to modify it. We'll get into that. But there's a few things that you may not know about modifying a 10th gen that are a little bit different than other cars. And we're here to talk about it. By the way, stop putting your elbows on your knees. You're gonna make your legs go numb. Okay, number one, there is a blow-off valve. Like if you're planning on getting blow-off valves or a header, like aftermarket for your car, this is where some of this information is gonna make the most sense. Number one, blow-off valves aren't good for this motor, as the dumped air does screw up with the PCM. This is something that's been pretty big on most cars, but a lot of people in the 10th Gen Si don't really quite know that yet. It does cause some erratic fuel trims and tuning issues. Most recommend just getting a cold air intake to emulate that beautiful noise that you want instead. Also, the Dream engine uses a combined cylinder head and exhaust manifold design. So you won't really get just like headers, for instance. You'll need to play around with your exhaust through a downpipe, a front pipe, or a front pipe back exhaust, which are all different, slightly different terms than what you're probably used to. The downpipes hide your cats, in case you're wondering. So if you want a bunch of power and you want it to sound better and you don't live in California and you want more noise, I would probably start there. To be fair, most downpipes hide the cats nowadays. The Nissan Z that we had when we modified that, that's where they were as well. And to get them out required a level of intricate surgery that I could not replicate if somebody paid me. I don't know if the SI is any easier. One would hope, but I can't promise it. Number 5.1, this is where we're gonna talk a little bit about having professional cooks in the comments. Guess what? I'm bowing up. I'm challenging you, random person that was a professional cook that told people how to actually cook salmon. Round 2, because we're talking about instant ramen. Use as little of water as you can, and then when you heat it, throw something like corn in there. Sometimes you can add some spice. I add a little bit of extra salt just because I really want my body to crave water after eating ramen. You want to add the ramen after the water is hot, not before. That's where the microwave issue starts to throw in. Microwave ramen is bad and it's cheating. I do it for lunch at work, but really stovetop, best way to go. You want to add an egg white on top, okay? And then cover it, but save the yolk. Once your ramen is almost done, reduce your heat, add the yolk back in, stir like crazy, and then put your like Shin ramen, the red packet, and you'll have the best midnight ramen ever, I promise. If you want to throw some other stuff in there, some green onions, you can. Sometimes I throw a little chicken, some jalapenos in there. It's not really about trying to make it like an authentic Japanese dish. It's about making it good. I've thrown cheese in there sometimes because I've just had a rough night. That is how you make instant ramen, and if you guys disagree, you can let me know below. I am going to continue to talk about food in this 20-minute episode. You guys need to learn how to eat 3 meals a day. Now, number 6, what are the reasons you'd want to buy one of these, a Civic Si, versus a Type R or another economy turbocharged car? Super common question, especially if you're looking to snag one. And the answer is personal preference, which is the worst answer somebody on the internet could give somebody looking for an answer. But I'm gonna give you my best shot. Most people are gonna compare the 10th Gen Si to a Subaru WRX, a Volkswagen GTI, or a 9th or 11th Gen Si. Here's what I would say. The WRX is gonna be more expensive. It's also gonna be less reliable. It's gonna give you a little bit more power, and it's gonna be more fun in the wintertime, but the Si is cheaper, more reliable, easier to modify, and simpler to drive. That's quite literally it. If you wanna compare the two, that's how you compare the two. The GTI is gonna be the hardest one to compete against because the GTI is properly good and nearly the benchmark for any car manufacturer that's looking to create like a 4-door kind of fun, spirited manual car. Really, the only thing you could compare to with the Civic Si is going to be dollar for dollar. If you find both of them at the same price, you might find that you'd like the GTI more. Typically speaking, the GTI is almost always going to be more expensive, and the parts that go along with it are more expensive than a Honda Civic Si. You would want the 10th Gen over the 9th Gen because it's more refined. It does take away a little bit that analog experience. And against the 11th Gen, bitch, you made a money? Like, what the hell's going on? The 11th Gen is gonna be more expensive. Personally, I think the 10th Gen is right in the perfect depreciation curve. It's way cheaper. There's just no way the 10th Gen's like the wrong answer. Unless you get it from a previous owner that just like doesn't they have for brains and they didn't take care of the car, you're never gonna have a bad experience with the Civic Si. That's true for true. 10th gen is a great generation. What version Honda Civic Si 10th gen should I get? Great question. Camera, you, me, we're discussing this. From 2017 to 2022, you have a few different options. Keep in mind you got adaptive dampers, a limited slip differential, 6-speed manual transmission here in the States. Most people would say if you wanted to get a very specific year, 2020 is gonna be the best. Anytime you wanna buy a vehicle, if you want a car that's at its lowest depreciation, you should wait at least 5 years from the launch date because that's where typically most of the depreciation has already set in. 2020 for the Honda Civic Si, you got LED headlights, fog lights, you got a little bit better gearing, you got some driver assists, you got updated bumpers, heated seats, dual climate control. And if you want something a little bit more analog without all those creature comforts, 2019 Coupe had everything besides the nannies mentioned previously. From there, all you have to do is decide on if you want a coupe or a sedan. Personally, I love the sedan. It's everything the Civic was meant to be. I think the coupe is fine, but the sedan, perfect. If you're buying a 2-door coupe, I don't know why you would buy a front-wheel drive manual car. I would recommend buying a rear-wheel drive car because you're gonna have more funds per gallon and you still get a trunk. If you're getting a 4-door car, I think the Honda Civic Si is perfect. Not to say the coupe's not a great answer. I'm just saying I think the sedan carries the function that the Civic is known for. Now, what are the best mods for a 10th gen Honda Civic Si? Well, if you want to make yours faster than a Type R, it's possible, but it'll take money, commitment, love, and a little bit of trust. My recommendation, don't compare it to a Type R. Instead, build something that's fun for you. Comparison is the thief of joy, friend. And if you keep comparing your Civic Si to a Type R, you're gonna live in a life of disappointment and regret. Instead, here's what you need to do. You're gonna need to do head studs and gaskets if you plan on throwing any power at this car. According to the internet, which is my clarifying statement because I have not confirmed this quite yet, the M8 head studs don't have the same tensile strength as older K series that used M12s. Because of that, they do have some issues holding power. To be fair, head studs are an issue on the 10th gen. Whether it's because of the tensile strength or not, I'm not entirely sure, but ARP head studs have to be on your shopping cart list if you plan to build it out. But while you're in there, do the clutch as well. They have a tendency to go up. XD, ACT, also have clutch options. You get a little bit more performance. Don't lose any daily drivability. From there, I would say spend money on things that make driving it more fun. To make driving it more fun, you need to be able to stop later, go earlier, turn in harder, and not lose your ass. So with that being said, EBC has upgraded sport slotted rotors with red stuff pads. Banging, $480. Borla exhaust. Kind of a weird plug, really, but when you think about it, you've got that, you've got NVIDIA that's like 1100. Borla's got really good QA. If you want that Type R style, actually, we just added a brand called Miltech. They have a resonated system, but that is going to be a touch more money, which is $2,331. You also have to cut your rear valance, but it sounds and looks insane. Number 3, get an intake if you want to hear that turbo sound, but don't get a blow-up valve. $300 for an in-gen intake. It's banging, it's awesome, it's easy to install, life is better, you can hear noises, everything's fantastic. BC Racing has a BR Series coilover for right around $1,200. You have a Tane option, which I think is around $700 on the website as well. I haven't ran Tane on the 10th Gen SIs, but I do worry a little bit about it. I've seen and I've driven on BCs on a 10th Gen SI, and it felt perfect. For wheels, 18 9.5 plus 35 is the size you'll want to go for. Tire size, 235 40 18s. Because we're talking about a Honda Civic, and everybody that owns a Honda Civic can be as young as 16 or as old as 55. You get a weird conversation going about wheel size. People will tell you to put 16s on this or 17s on this. Do not listen to those people. Those people are about to cash out their 401k, okay? What we need to do is it's a 2020. 18s are the perfect size. 17s, I think, are too small. 19s are oddly too big unless you slam it. So 18, 9.5, 35. If you want an affordable wheel and tire package, the Vors TR4 and Hankook Ventus V2 are $1,700 with TPMS. If you want a mid-tier, you want something a little bit nicer, Stage Knights with Toyo Extensa HP2s are gonna be $2,100. with TPMS. And if you want like hot shot diggity dog, you look like the cat's ass, Work Emotion ZR10s in Glim Black with Continental DWS 06s, $3,200 with TPMS, shipped to your door, is hot. You'll probably want to get an upgraded big brake kit though, because once you actually put on aftermarket wheels and you see how tiny those front brakes are, it kind of makes you feel a little emasculated, but that's besides the point. The wheels and tires look sick. Now, you might say, Alex, I want more power. I miss him. Well, I agree. These engines don't do well with loads of it. So unless you're building the whole thing, I would probably advise kind of keeping it simple on there. And the reason I say that is because people, if you go out there on the internet, there's a lot of folks that will tell you that the crankshafts can be a little weak, the connecting rods are a little weak, their car has rev hang issues, the car has issues with head bolts. I don't know if the SI is a car that you'd want to go build into like a straight up street racer. Not saying it can't be, it gets expensive. And at that point, you open yourself up to other cars you should buy instead. What the Civic Si does is it makes it a fun car for you, and it makes it functional for everything that you need to do with a car to live life as a normal adult with normal responsibilities. And I would keep it that way. Getting a good tune with some basic bolt-ons, connecting the car to the road with some decent tires and driving it, keeping it under 300 horsepower is probably the best thing you can do for yourself. With that being said, all this information was given to you for the low, low price of nothing, because most of it is useless. You might not even own a Honda Civic Si, in which case, God bless you for knowing things about something you don't own. Because when people have an opinion on the internet, you can correct them. Speaking of which, if you guys have any feedback or guesses on how you modded your 1.5 liter or modified your 10th gen Civic Si and you want to let the world know, let us know in the comments below. And of course, if you want us to cover a platform, just drop it as well. I read every single one that I possibly can. And if you think my ramen recipe is wrong, I will meet you at the flagpole at 5 o'clock because we are throwing hands. I'm Alex Martini with 2 underscores on Instagram. We hope you enjoyed this video. Mod your car with your friends over at martiniworks.com, and we'll see you later. Adios.